Welcome back to the Podcast Digest. My name is Dan Lizette, and I want to thank you for taking the time once again to listen to this show. I hope you've been enjoying the recent episodes, especially the interview series. It's really been a blast doing this, and I've got great things planned for the future. If you are enjoying the show, would you please leave a brief review on iTunes and Stitcher? Please. It would literally help the show out huge. It only take you about 90 seconds. And if you're not already, you can follow the show on Twitter at Pod Digest or like the show on Facebook, facebook.com/thepodcastdigest. Feedback is always welcome and appreciated and can be emailed to thepodcastdigest@gmail.com. Last but not least, the home for all things TPD, including previous episodes as well as some exclusive blog entries, can be found at thepodcastdigest.info. And now on to this week's show. This week, I've got another great podcast recommendation for you guys. I came across this one based on a Twitter @mention or DM I got from an account named Shark Dropper Studios asking me if I'd checked out one of their shows called Doppel Avenue Hurt. So I checked it out on iTunes, and the description immediately told me that this was something going to be totally different. It appeared to be a crime story, but with some elements of comedy. It appeared episodic. There were 12 episodes. Then there was a cast rap show as in episode 13, and I thought, whoa, what is this? This is different. And I'm always looking for something new and different, so I downloaded episode 1 and thought, holy crap, this is cool, and proceeded to plow through the whole season in just about a week. And to talk more about it, I've had the good fortune to be joined by a couple of the key folks behind Doppel Avenue Hurt from Shark Dropper Studios. I'd like to welcome Kyle Appleyard and Robert Lamb. Kyle and Robert, welcome to the Podcast Digest.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, definitely. This is awesome.
So this is something that's completely different in the history of the Podcast Digest, meaning Doppel Avenue Hurt. It is a podcast unlike any other, but rather than I explain exactly what you guys have put together, Kyle and Robert, why don't you tell all the listeners exactly what Doppel Avenue Hurt is?
You want me to take this?
You're the writer.
All right. Yeah, basically, Doppel Avenue Hurt is a fictional, serialized show that was... We wanted to do something that was like the old 40s radio shows. Back in the day, people sat around their radio and just listened to stories, and we wanted to kind of do that. We know that there have been podcasts that have done that, but we wanted to take it in a different direction, and we wanted to do a detective story, but we decided to kind of make it more of a spoof, like a la Naked Gun, and that's basically what we did. We created this kind of spoof film noir series set in the present day, and just kind of like... With podcasting, you can do kind of these narrations and stuff, and that works great with film noirs. So that's kind of what we did. We just decided we were going to do one season, see how it turned out, and if it turned out great, we were going to keep going with it and just become this big series that we would, get behind.
We really wanted to do something different. Like, we knew we wanted to do podcasts because when Robert had the idea for this podcast, I was actually doing one on my own, and him having heard mine. It was like, hey, we should get into doing this, and he's always like the screenwriter. He sent scripts off to various places and had them copyrighted. Went to submitted scripts for contests, so he was always the writer of the group, and he had a bunch of ideas. This being the easiest one to do because it was just it was a detective series. There wasn't a lot of crazy sound effects necessary,
although it does get crazy.
It does get crazy, yeah.
Goes on, which we didn't expect at first, but yeah, it ended up happening.
But that's sort of how that happened. We kind of chose. There was lists of ideas, and
what we did was when we started, we wanted to kind of do like the spoof film noir, and as we were going, it just started to get like crazier and crazier, and we realized like let's just do whatever, like let's not put really any limits on it. So we just kind of kept going in it, and like I think editing and acting wise, you can kind of just see it evolving as it goes on.
And Robert, you had mentioned that you were the writer of Doppel Avenue Hurt. Now, I have no experience with screenplays and the like. Could you estimate for us exactly how long something like this had taken you to write?
Usually I can get like one episode done. I mean, right now I'm working 2 jobs, so it's hard to find time to write. And a lot of times I'm writing, at night, late at night when I get home. Every once in a while I'll have like a day or 2 off in a row, and that's when I'll spend basically, I'd get like one episode done every week and a half. It depended on if I had a story already in my head. And sometimes like just sitting at the keyboard and the computer just like thinking of something, it was hard. So a lot of times when I was at my actual job, I'd be thinking of ideas. So that way when I got home, I could just type them all up and get it going. And usually after a while, it just started coming out.
Well, as you guys know, I'm definitely a big fan of the product that you guys have put out. And when somebody listens to this, they will find that there are so many different elements to highlight in terms of strengths. Obviously, we talked about the writing, but also the voice acting, an amazing cast of characters, including yourself, Kyle. You were the lead voice actor, that of Detective Keyes.
Yeah, I played James Keyes, the lead actor, and out of all of the people involved with Shark Trapper Studios, we knew it had to be somebody that would kind of be there to put in the work to do the voice acting,
somebody that we could rely on.
Yeah, so basically one of the three of us, like the Robert, myself, and our friend John Lotsevith, we all kind of sat down and was like, okay, it's got to be one of us three, and you'll hear later, like in the wrap up show, you hear on that show, like Robert says that, you know, we all decided, hey, let's send it, let's test it out, let's all record something of the script, and let's see, you know, who sounds the best. I was the only one that did it, so I got the part.
Yeah.
And had you done anything like this before in terms of voice acting?
Not really, no, not at all. Like we growing up, we always did movies and together. Like we shot our own little movies, and other than that, no. I've always kind of like wanted to be a voice actor. I've always done like I got into podcasting, and you know, I've always aspired to be sort of a voice actor, so I put a lot of it into that.
And guys, let's talk more about this production process. We've alluded to the number of characters, several different voice actors. There was obviously a lot going on with the production of Doppel Avenue Hurt, including tons of sound effects, editing, writing, all kinds of things involved, I'm sure. Can you tell us a little bit more about what this process was like for you guys?
Well, when I started writing, I believe it was January or February of last year. And then I gave it, like, we have, like, our partner who edits it, Jonathan Moss, he edits the whole season, and he's, like, great at it. And
he's a magician.
Yeah, you can see just the product he turns out, and you can see how he evolves throughout the season. But basically, like, I would write the scripts, take me a week to 2 weeks to write a script, give it to him, and then it would take him, he said, like, when he started, it was taking him an hour to edit one page of a script, and each script was roughly 22 pages. So I mean, he was looking at a full day of editing, and obviously he couldn't do that all in one sitting, but he would break it up, and you know, every week and a half he'd have it done. So it took a while to really get it out, and that's why we didn't have, I think, till August. Like, that was the first episode came out in August.
Yeah, and we had already had like maybe 3 recorded by then.
I think we actually had a good 5 or 6 edited by the time that we hit release. And
by the time we actually released episode, yeah, you're right. Yeah,
right. And then that's when we started releasing them, and that's when we started to become like,
which was a mistake looking back on it.
Looking back at it now, we realize we want to have most of it, if not all of it, edited before we release, so that way we're not pushed up against a wall when we can't get somebody to record on a certain day, because that really caused some struggles with getting the season out.
Yeah.
And tell me about that recording process. It appears from some of the comments made in the wrap episode that a lot of the recordings were done by themselves, not with multiple people in the same room. How did that work out?
We pieced together all of them, actually. I don't think any 2 members of the cast recorded in the same room for the entire first season. And it's just because we all have day jobs, and it's all hard to get everybody to coordinate. So I would usually take a microphone home, record on my MacBook because I had the most dialogue, and then Robert would have people come in here and record just off these little Behringer mics, or what are they? What are Sennheisers? These little Sennheiser mics.
And that's, I mean, basically, because I wrote the script, a lot of times, like, Kyle did a good job of just knowing how to, like, make Keyes sound. Like, he just found the voice for it. So when other people came in, if they were just a guest starring role, I'd try to get their lines of dialogue to fit in with how I knew Kyle would, you know, speak the lines. So sometimes it didn't turn out that great, but we usually had people record 3 or 4 of that same line, so that way when Jonathan edited, he could find the perfect match.
Yeah.
Well, my compliments, because I can tell you from the end product as a listener to the whole series, it certainly sounded as if everyone was in the same room recording, and it was only during that wrap show that I was ever able to listen back and maybe try to find a time or two when that seemed to make sense, because in the end, it certainly sounded great. Obviously, you guys had a lot of people involved in the production process here. How many people would you say actually came together to make Doppel Avenue Hurt?
It's got to be maybe 20.
I'd say about yeah.
20. I mean, the cast itself, we had a lot of bit parts and people who just showed up for maybe one episode.
Yeah.
But if you count all those plus the regulars, and then you got our editor and writer, I mean, I'd say about 20 people for season 1.
And the crazy question I have for you is, where did you guys find so many people? Just from your friends, or had to go beyond that?
No, actually, we have a large group of friends. Actually, we do. My girlfriend played a part in episode 2, I think it was. And
yeah, I mean, we got people, and we even auditioned some people if we thought that they would read for one role, and it turned out like it wasn't that great. So we're like, let's fit them into this role instead and see if it works out, and then it would. And that's what we did. We just mixed and matched until, like, especially like our editor, when he would edit it, he'd be like, I think this fits better with this. So we would, switch roles or whatever we had to do. But yeah, everybody, just people we knew, we just got people together and it worked out.
Yeah. Robert's good at just like asking people things, and the people do things for Robert. It's incredible. I don't know how he does it, but like he's like, yeah.
Mind control.
It's mind control or something.
Mind control. That would definitely help. Well, guys, I want to ask, there are so many unique personalities in the show, so many intricate details with each one of them. Was this something that, Robert, you'd written into the script, or do you think this is something that the actors you guys had chosen brought out?
I think it's both.
Yeah.
When I wrote the first episode, I mean, I kind of had an idea of like what I wanted the characters to be like, and when they came in, they read it kind of how I envisioned it. But as the season went on and as I wrote more, I let people experiment. Like I told them, like, improv, like just add stuff to the lines. And that's what a lot of the characters would, or even just the way they read certain lines is not how I pictured it, but it turned out better. And we would just use those lines. Like Jonathan, even in the wrap up, says that like when he was editing, he would try to find just whichever one, like, not only made it more funny or like made the whole situation funnier, but the one that just worked the best. And sometimes it was that last take where it was just an improv line.
You'll hear this on the wrap up again, but usually what he'll do is he'll use a lot of the lines he uses are just ones where someone's just kind of completely going off script. And a thing that Robert did with the characters was after because the way that we recorded this, like we had 3 episodes in the can and then they were fully edited before he was even done writing. So hearing it all done and finished with, I know that you would change, you kind of morph the characters to suit like how they were playing them, and like that very much happened with Paul.
Yeah, you can see like as the first couple episodes, like for me anyways, I think they get funnier as they go because I did kind of also write them for whoever was speaking the lines. And once we cast the whole, like the regulars for the season, I kind of went with them and just kind of saw how they were saying the lines, and that's how I morphed those characters into that. And I think that worked out well too.
Folks, I got to tell you, if you've still not yet hit that subscribe button on Doppel Avenue Hurt, now is the time to do it. This was simply a phenomenal listen. But you'd mentioned Paul, and I got to tell you, Paul was straight up ridiculous, okay? If he said, I think you're cheating on my wife, or are you cheating on my wife? If he said it once, he said it 100 times.
Paul is definitely a fan favorite. We've realized. Even Paul and Edith, I mean, just because they're like the two
craziest characters
to Keys, and they're both just like, and I think I talk about this in the wrap up too, obviously, but Paul, who's played by our friend Jose Caraballo, he when we started, I kind of just wrote him as this just like ignorant kind of person, and the way he spoke his lines are just like he's just ignorant. He was mean to kind of people, but he didn't realize it. But then as it went on, I kind of turned him into this man-child kind of guy. And so a lot of times I just give him these ridiculous lines, and a lot of times I'm doing it just to see if I can make our friend crack up laughing as he's doing it. And it just, if I can, then I know like I got a good line there for him.
And I'll tell you, it was so well written, well designed, well organized that listeners tend, I'm sure, to identify with you, Kyle, as Keys, because you played the absolute straight man that all these other crazy characters end up having to play off. And sometimes listening to your reactions were an absolute treat. I think your reactions and the way you handled Keys is the only thing that makes some of these other characters work so well because you're so straight-laced.
You gave me chills when you say that, because like that's exactly what I would tell Robert. I was like, I just got to be the absolute straight man to all these ridiculous characters, and like I was a little dry, and there were some moments in the script that called for Keys to be silly, and he gets a little crazy towards the end, I think. But most of the time, it's he's just a straight man to like an entire cast of characters. Like everybody he meets is just like there's something wrong with him.
And you can kind of see it as the season goes on. You almost get kind of frustrated or exhausted with them. Like the way you would read your lines, you would actually just sigh. Like it was, I don't know. I think it just worked out so well.
And what's so great about it is you see this straight man to crazy people dichotomy all throughout the season until just about 2/3 the way through. You get this little glimmer of hope when Keys is doing all the interviews in the mansion with the family members that maybe, just maybe, there might be one person who isn't completely crazy, and then you find out later, nope, she's crazy too.
Yeah. I think that's the one that does the exclamations or something. Or
that it was I believe it's
oh yeah.
That was the interview at the O'Reilly mansion where he's interviewing this whole family, and everybody, like the whole family's just crazy. But yes, then you find out that she's the one person that he thought out of the family that was normal. You find out in later episodes that she's just kind of a freak.
Yeah.
So.
I'll tell you, I could really talk about the show that you guys have created for a good long while, but I don't want to give away too many spoilers, and I do want folks to go check it out to hear all the details of these crazy characters that we're talking about. And before we move forward, folks, I do want to mention that this is definitely an adult podcast, right? I mean, this is not something for the kids or to be listening to around your kids, so adults only. But before we move forward, I really wanted to talk about listener response. What have you been hearing? What is the feedback you guys have received on the show?
Good. Yeah, everything we've heard so far is good. I mean, we haven't got a lot of negative feedback other than like sometimes when we go to plug, people are like, why would you plug this here or something like that. But for the most part, everybody seems to they love it. I mean, if they don't listen all the way through, they at least acknowledge and say, hey, look, you guys are doing something different. This is great. And yeah, it's been positive so far from what I've heard.
But we've even gotten like emails about people just talking about how Paul is just a crazy character, and we gotten even emails about how people love Edith, like just they can't get enough of Edith, or they want to see more Edith in season 2. So like hearing that is awesome. Like hearing like the people are liking these characters so much that they want to see more of them. It's a pretty cool experience.
It is. It's awesome.
Well, the fan response makes complete sense to me because, in my opinion, whatever response you guys have been getting, whatever download numbers, whatever attention you've received so far, it's not enough. And I really hope that more and more people take a listen to Doppel Avenue Heard. I think it's a very unique listening experience. And somebody like myself who listens to so many podcasts, when I come across something that really perks my ears up, so to speak, with something that's so unique and different, it's something that I think is worthy of the type of attention that you guys are describing. But I want to talk a little bit more about fans. In the rap show, you guys had said something interesting, and that not only do you love your fans, but you are actually willing to involve some of them in the show itself. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. In fact, next season, we have a girl on Twitter, a woman on Twitter, Julia W.D. Harrison, reached out to us about the podcast. And she's actually going to be in season 2. She has a role to play in season 2. Big role, yeah, a fairly big role. So, a part of just getting the word out about the podcast, we feel is getting fans involved. And if you got the chops, we'll hear what you got to say on a script. We'll send you a script and hear what you got to say and find a part for you. And that's basically what she did. She said, "Hey, I'd love to be involved in any way possible." So we sent her a script. She sent back a bunch of voices. She was amazing. So we're gonna have her on for season 2.
And it turns out like even getting like other people, like I mean, she knows people that are probably going to cameo too and be on certain episodes.
Yeah.
So, and we also want to get not only like just fans, but other podcasters. Like we actually have other podcasters that like we listen to coming on and voicing characters too, just for one episode, just because we like the whole mix and match and just getting as many people in on it as we can.
And I don't want you to give away any Season 2 secrets or anything of that nature, but for those of us who have already listened to Season 1, just one simple question. Can we expect most of the fan favorites to be making a return in Season 2?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of the fan favorites will be back. We're also doing something special with a few of the characters. We're going to have side stories coming out in between the seasons. So we actually have an Edith-centric 3-episode arc kind of
vignette.
Yeah, episode coming out. It'll be 3 parts. It'll come out, I think, next month. And it's just going to be Edith. It's just her character, and it's kind of a side story. Has nothing to do with Keys or what he's doing at the time. And we're doing that kind of as fan service for people who want to see more of these side characters.
And I don't know if I want to say that. I'll just say it anyway. Screw it. We're gonna throw up a Hail Mary pass on a guest for this podcast. I won't tell I'll tell you after the podcast who we're trying to get, but we're throwing an absolute Hail Mary to try to get somebody for this podcast, and I don't know. We'll see if it works out.
Yeah. If not, we'll find someone to fill the role.
Yeah, somebody.
So let me ask you guys this question. Now that you guys have completed Season 1, and as we've talked about, the listener reception, the fan reception has been so great, as you guys are making preparations and knee-deep, so to speak, with the Season 2 process, do you feel an extra added pressure now to sort of one-up yourselves or avoid a sophomore slump with Season 2?
Personally, as the writer, I did feel that way when I first started. I'm actually... Writing-wise, I'm on episode 5. I've been concentrating as much time as I can to this because I know we move release date up. But yeah, when I first started episode 1 of season 2, I was kind of nervous about how I was going to go about doing it. But I slowly got back into it, and giving the scripts to both Kyle here and our editor, and having some other people come in and read lines, like everyone's saying that it's just as funny or funnier than season 1, so that's what I like to hear. And if that's the case, then I feel good about what we have in store for season 2.
I think I've only heard episode 1 so far.
Yeah,
and it's good.
Yeah, so I think we'll do all right with season 2. I think we have a lot of good stuff in store. We also have some cameos coming up for season 2, like actual other podcasters, so that'll be fun. And like Kyle said, we have fans that are going to be part of this one too.
Mm-hmm.
So from a production standpoint, with all the challenges that you guys face in the first season, you talked about how many episodes you had in the can before you began to release, the process of recording, and sort of the full process the first time around. This time around, given your experience now, have you guys chosen to change anything, or have you learned anything from the first time around?
Just seeing the look on Jonathan's face when we give him something, and like the last season we put a lot of pressure on him, and God bless him, he delivered, and we put it all out in the time frame that we wanted to do, and none of this would be possible without the talent that he has. He's a guy that. He has a degree in this stuff in audio editing, and he's never done anything like this before, podcast wise. So he kind of took this on and made it his own in his own special way. Like a lot of that dirty humor, a lot of that stuff is him, because he's just got like kind of this unique sort of little bit sick in the head personality where it just comes out in the editing, and I love that about it. And so, when it came to the editing, there was a lot of pressure put on him last season, and I think this next season we're really trying to like work ahead so we don't have to do that again and have that happen again.
And when I write a script, I write the script, and then I get people to come record, or like Kyle will go record. He'll take a script and he'll record at his place. But then when I hand the script to Jonathan, that's my part's done. So I can't wait to hear the final product, but the recording and the writing's done for that episode, so I just wait to see what he has. So a lot of times he'll text me when I write like a scene in an episode that's just so ridiculous for him to edit. I don't want to spoil anything, but there's like a sex scene that was just like really intense for him to edit, and I remember him just texting me and being like, I quit the show. I don't want to do this anymore.
And actually, I think I recall him saying that on the rap episode that he wanted to quit. Let me ask you guys this question. Doppel Avenue Hurt was such a cool fictional-based story. Have you guys had any thoughts of any other podcasts that might be fictional-based along these lines, or maybe of a different style at all?
A couple, actually.
Yeah. Right now, we're actually, while we're doing Doppel Avenue Hurt, we're actually working on a horror podcast. It's another fictionalized podcast, but it's strictly horror, no comedy. And it's kind of even psychological horror. And Jonathan's also editing it.
And starring.
Jonathan's a voice in it. He's the main character in this one. And Kyle plays another character. And
very annoying character.
Supporting character, yeah.
The only comedy, if there's any comedy, it's from my
Kyle,
character, yeah.
And basically, yeah, it's just this one's going to be a little bit longer of a season. Right now, we're looking at like 18 episodes, but we're not sure like if that's exactly how many there'll be. I'm writing it right now. Jonathan's been editing, and we look like we're gonna probably release it either
winter, right? Winter?
No, August, October,
oh, wow.
something like that, or September, yeah. So late fall or early fall, and
we've got about, I think we've done production meetings on 4 of them so far. 4 episodes in the can.
He actually has about 5 episodes edited right now for this new horror series.
And it's sounding really good. And it's actually, I've been scared listening to it. Yeah. Because we'll have production meetings, and we're all like with Doppel Avenue Hurt, we're all sitting there with a pen and a paper and just going through it. With this one, I'm sitting there with my eyes closed, like trying to get in the darkness of it, and it kind of really unnerves you with the things that Jonathan does as far as like editing and just the performance that everybody gives. So I'm really excited for people to start to hear it.
I think at the bottom of the podcast show art for this one, there should be a little note about headphones recommended or turn off the lights.
Yeah.
Maybe we were thinking that.
There's a little preview of that out on. We have it on our SoundCloud. I think it's SoundCloud / Shark Drop or whatever. It's Shark Drop or SoundCloud, but you can hear a little blurb from a little teaser from that. It's called Paralyzed.
I can tell you guys from what you're describing, seems like an extraordinary amount of work between what you've done with Doppel Avenue Hurt, what you're describing to us now with the new horror podcast, Paralyzed. It leads me to this very broad-based question, and feel free to take this in any direction you like, but what keeps you guys going?
Kyle?
I don't know. I said at the beginning of this, I've always aspired to be a voice actor or being in radio, as I'm sure like a lot of podcasters are. A lot of people that do podcasts are like guys that, hey, I want to do this too. So that's kind of me, and doing it in our own way, like doing radio in your own way is doing just a regular talking podcast, and voice acting in my own way is doing this. And when Robert first talked to me about this, I'm like, yeah, I'm doing this for sure, 100%. So that in itself motivates me, as in like this is just a big dream for us. We'd all like to quit our jobs and try to make money off of this. To be honest, I mean that's far down the road. That's way far down the road. But I mean that's
the hardest thing is right now just juggling our work and everything else that we're doing. Some of us are going to school and like doing all that kind of stuff along with this. But because we're so passionate about doing these podcasts, that's why like we're going to stick with it, and we want to get as much content out as possible. But it does take time, and that's why we're writing and editing Doppel Avenue Hurt right now, but it won't be out until the summer. Same with the horror podcast.
I don't think I've ever talked to you about this, Robert, but like I don't know if it's the same way for you, but like when you're finished with work, your weeks are planned. Like you know what you're doing. Like we're doing, every night it's something.
Recording somebody, writing a script. Yeah, I mean, or doing a production meeting, or we even have nonfiction podcasts that we do that you can see on our website, and like we record for those every week too. So
yeah.
And I think that what you guys have produced here will end up being sort of like a living resume or a living portfolio of all the work that you guys have created. And it is something you guys should be extraordinarily proud of, and you will be able to point to other entities in the future that may want to look at the quality of what you guys are putting out. One example, somebody on Twitter, I could have been you, Kyle, who'd mentioned to me when I was first looking into the show, you'd made a statement about be patient, the audio quality gets better. And I noticed that, from episode 1 or 2, as it progresses, you did see an improvement in things, and that is a statement to, I think, the work that you guys are doing, that even in line, you're looking for things to be improved and get better, and so on and so forth.
Absolutely. Like one of my favorite things to do with this podcast with Doppel Avenue Hurt is like I listen to the first episode and then I listen to episode 12 and just the difference between that. And then here in season 2, like we're no longer doing them off these Sennheisers. We bought a nice actual condenser microphone to do vocals off of. So like that'll improve in the second season. And Jonathan has carried over his editing from season 1 to episode 1 of season 2. And it's just, I don't know. I feel like I would like to hear where it is, where we end up from season 2, because if it's anywhere like it was from season 1, then, I can only imagine.
And I like the idea, and I think Jonathan's mentioned this to us, seeing the whole season out on iTunes. It's just that sense of accomplishment.
Yeah, it's nice.
It was a lot of work to do it, and we know that, once that came out, I went right into writing season 2. Like, we haven't really taken a break. We haven't taken a break from this at all,
yeah.
And we don't plan on it. I mean, who knows how many seasons we'll do of this series, and
just
we'll
going to keep going
at it.
Yeah.
And from the listener standpoint, I can tell you it is also unique to see the whole season out there in iTunes. It's almost a Netflix-style binge listening that when you come to a show like Doppel Avenue Hurt, at this point where the season has already been published for a couple of months, you can literally binge through this whole deal. I know I did it. I hit at least 5 episodes on an NFL Sunday, had all the games in my eyes, but Doppel Avenue Hurt in my ears, and it was an awesome experience. So, listeners, if you are subscribing, which I know you've done by now, right? That is one of the benefits through this. Each episode as it comes, you'll be able to go from one to the next to the next. Let's talk about some of the other things Shark Dropper is doing. You guys have alluded to a couple other podcasts that you have out there. Tell us about those.
Out now we have the Horror Play podcast. That's another one that we're very proud of. We rate and review video games. Robert's a huge fan of horror. He's always been a fan of horror games.
Right.
I'm one of those crazy persons that doesn't like scary movies, but I like scary games. So it's like I'm in on the podcast and intermittently, and it's mostly Robert and John.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nonfiction podcast. I mean, we get together. We'll every other week we'll sit down and record a podcast based on some game that we just played, and we just rate it on scariness because we're trying to find what's the scariest game. And so that's one of them. We also do the Shark Dropper podcast, which is just me, Kyle, and our other friend John sitting around, and that one's more for fun.
Just ridiculousness.
That's just us sitting around talking.
Yeah.
And
it's your run-of-the-mill podcast.
Yeah. I mean, that was the one that actually got us started into podcasting and got us kind of, or at least me and John. Kyle was already doing it, but me and John kind of got used to being on mic, and that helped us out. We were just able to sit around and talk about different current events or improv or anything. And then Kyle's got his own sports.
Yeah, I got a sports podcast, and this is more of like a because we're from Tampa Bay, Florida, so it's more of a Tampa sports podcast. I call it Word of the Bay. My friend Nick and I and Jonathan, who is our editor, we all sit down and talk basically Tampa sports, the Buccaneers, the Rays, the Lightning, but sports in general. And then we go off topic, and we kind of try to put a little funny twist on it. But it's a sports podcast. And
we have those are the ones we have out right now. But we are planning on releasing, I think, 2 more nonfiction podcasts this year. And then we also have more fictionalized podcasts coming out this year, including the horror one we talked about earlier, Paralyzed. And then we also have, you want to talk about?
Oh yeah, we have Cop Doctors.
Cop Doctors.
Cops by day, doctors by night.
Yeah, it's another comedy podcast. Basically, Kyle and I play 2 guys, just in case and just in time. And basically, we're cops by day, doctors at night, and that's just what it is. It's just going to be 10-minute episodes, and they'll release kind of whenever. They're not going to be held to the season format. We just want to have something else that we can kind of put out there when Doppel Avenue Hurt's not being released or Paralyzed isn't being released. So we got that one. And then we also have a couple, even a sci-fi one that might be out later this year in December. So got a lot of stuff.
Which one is that? Do you want to give the name of it? Or
I'll reveal. Yeah, the name of that one's going to be End of All Hope.
End of All Hope.
And that's apocalyptic sci-fi.
I have no idea about this one. I don't know.
Yeah, that's just another one I'm writing. And so hopefully we'll have 4 fictionalized podcasts coming out this year, which will be a lot of work, but
that's
worth it.
well, yeah. We want that to be our focus, is putting out those fictional. That's why we call it studios, Shark Trapper Studios, because so we could be known for putting out those kind of podcasts.
So it's clear from all of this game plan that you guys have just outlined for us that we're dealing with so much work. I can't imagine the workload that you guys are under. When I was looking at your website earlier, I saw that previous to Doppel Avenue Hurt, there was an attempt at a Kickstarter campaign. Have you guys considered moving forward maybe a Patreon effort?
Yeah, John Lossova told us about Patreon. He's one of the co-hosts for Shark Dropper, and he kind of told us about that a couple weeks ago, and we looked into it, and then it got pushed by the wayside. But we had to get back into that.
Yeah, I mean, we do want to look into something like that, because if we could get, some kind of funding, it would definitely help us out. I mean, just because of the time and effort, and because of the stuff that we buy, and the different mics and sound mixers and everything that we try to improve the quality. Yeah, we thought about some kind of fundraising to help us out.
And I'll tell you, the show that you guys are producing and the shows that you're describing, the second season of Doppel Avenue Hurt, as well as some of these others, is a prime candidate, I think, for a crowdfunding effort. Kyle Jest, a host of the Laps podcast I spoke to on a previous episode of the Podcast Digest, talked about the work and effort that he has put into his podcast, and I imagine what you guys are describing here is at least on par, if not far beyond the efforts that he's got in place with his show. And I imagine there would be any number of folks who wouldn't mind supporting those efforts with a monthly recurring contribution.
Yeah, we started that Kickstarter as just, well, let's see what happens, and it kind of fell on its face.
Well, that was actually even before we released Doppel.
Yeah, we didn't have anything out.
We didn't have anything to show for it. I think the fact that we actually have something to show for it now is why we want to try doing something like that again. So Patreon, yeah, I definitely would want to look into that.
The whole marketing thing, we're kind of learning as we go. We're learning on the fly.
Yeah, that marketing stuff is definitely tough. Well, here's an opportunity. Before we go, folks, please tell all the listeners where they can find everything that Shark Dropper's doing.
Okay. Robert, you mind? Okay. The website is www.sharkdropper.com. I recently tried to redo that website. So right there on the front, there's 3 buttons that are pictures of all 3 of our currently released, all 4 of our currently released projects. Shark Dropper being at the top, and then the rest being at the bottom, so you can listen, or you can find them there and subscribe there.
Twitter at Shark Dropper.
Yeah, our Twitter is at Shark Dropper. You can find me. I'm very active on Twitter. Kyle WOTB. That's KYLE WOTB. I think you're on Twitter as well.
rlam713.
Yeah, but if you sharkdropper.com to make it absolutely as simple as possible, you can go to sharkdropper.com. You can subscribe to Doppel Avenue Hurt or Horror Play Podcast or Word of the Bay if you're into that, or Shark Dropper if you want to hear us sit around and BS for a while.
And we're on Instagram, we're on Tumblr. We're also going to have a YouTube presence pretty soon.
Oh, that's right. So, yeah, we're doing a little YouTube stuff.
Yeah, we're doing some YouTube series soon. So yeah, we're gonna
shot some footage for that
everywhere
yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah. So pretty much anywhere YouTube Shark Dropper, Instagram at Shark Dropper. We're not on Vine really. We're not really on Tumblr. We don't do Tumblr.
Yeah, not too often.
Yeah. That's really it.
And folks, a lot of these links will already be in the show notes as well, so if you have trouble finding anything, check the show notes for this episode. All the links for Shark Dropper will be there as well. And Kyle and Robert, thank you very much for your time. I hope folks come in droves over to Doppel Avenue and all the things that Shark Dropper's doing.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
And folks, that'll do it for this week's episode of the Podcast Digest. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen. If you've enjoyed what you've heard, please share this episode and any episode of the Podcast Digest with a friend on your social network of choice. Don't forget to follow the show on Twitter at Pod Digest or on Facebook, facebook.com/the Podcast Digest. Always looking for your email, show suggestions, feedback at thepodcastdigest@gmail.com. And don't forget, you want to hear some of the old stuff or read some of the exclusive blog entries I've mentioned. The home of the show is thepodcastdigest.info. Until next week, folks, thank you very much for listening. I'm Dan Lizette for the Podcast Digest.